The cranberry sauce had barely been passed around our Thanksgiving table when my brother Derek stood up, straightening his tie with that familiar smirk I had grown to despise over 28 years. Our parents looked up expectantly as Derek cleared his throat dramatically. "I have an announcement that will change everything for this family," he declared, his voice dripping with self-importance. "As of this morning, I am officially the new regional director at Patterson Industries." His chest puffed out as he continued, "I'm making 6 figures now, leading a team of 40 people, and I'm finally somebody important." Then he looked directly at me, his eyes cold and calculating. "Unlike some people at this table, I'm the new regional director, and you're still nothing." I smiled calmly, knowing I had signed the acquisition papers yesterday, and said, "Actually, you're not." Growing up in our suburban Cleveland home, Derek had always been the sun around which our family orbited. While I spent countless hours hunched over textbooks in my bedroom, Derek charmed his way through school with minimal effort and maximum praise from our parents, Robert and Martha. They celebrated every B grade he earned as if it were a Nobel Prize, while my straight A report cards were met with a simple nod and the expectation that academic excellence was just what quiet girls like me were supposed to achieve without recognition. The pattern established itself early and cruelly. Derek would steal my completed homework assignments, copying them word for word before I even realized they were missing. When I built an elaborate volcano for the 6th grade science fair spending weeks, perfecting the chemical reaction, Derek deliberately knocked it over the night before the competition, claiming it was an accident while wearing that same smirk he displayed at dinner tables years later. Somehow, I was blamed for being careless with my project placement. High school brought new levels of sabotage disguised as sibling rivalry. Derek convinced our parents that my acceptance letter to MIT was probably a mistake, arguing that girls didn't belong in business or technology fields anyway. Suzie should focus on something more suitable like teaching or nursing. He told them over dinner one evening while I sat there feeling my dreams being dismissed as easily as clearing plates from the table. Our parents nodded thoughtfully, as if Derek's opinion carried the weight of educational expertise rather than pure jealousy. College separated us geographically, but not emotionally. While Derek coasted through state school on our parents' dime, partying his way to a mediocre business degree, I worked 3 jobs to supplement my MIT scholarship studying finance and computer science until my eyes burned from exhaustion. Every family gathering became Derek's personal stage to boast about his fraternity connections and social life, while my academic achievements were brushed aside as boring or too complicated for family conversation. The worst part wasn't Derek's behavior itself, but watching our parents enable it year after year. They funded his expensive spring break trips while I ate ramen noodles for weeks to afford textbooks. They bragged about his party planning skills to neighbors while my published research papers collected dust on their coffee table, unread and unmentioned. I learned to swallow my hurt and focus on building something they couldn't diminish or steal from me. After graduation, Derek landed entry-level positions through family connections and his fraternity network job, hopping whenever actual work was expected of him. Each new position came with grandiose announcements about his rising career trajectory, while I quietly built my investment firm from nothing but determination and intelligence. Our parents never questioned why Derek needed their financial help well into his 20s, or why his job descriptions always sounded more impressive than his actual responsibilities seemed to warrant. Tonight felt different, though, as Derek announced his promotion with particular venom directed at me. He had always been competitive, but this felt personal and cruel in a way that surprised even me after years of his dismissive treatment. "You see, Mother and Father, some children make their families proud through real accomplishments in the business world," he said, gesturing grandly around the dining room, "while others just fade into the background, never amounting to anything significant or noteworthy." But as Derek continued his self-congratulatory speech, I felt something shift inside me. The familiar sting of his words was replaced by a calm certainty that justice was about to unfold in ways he could never imagine. For once, I held all the cards in a game he didn't even know we were playing. The climactic moment arrived when Derek leaned back in his chair, wine glass raised triumphantly, and declared with absolute certainty, "I got this promotion over 3 women who thought they deserved it more than me. But you know what? I charm the old boys network, and frankly, women just don't have what it takes for real leadership positions." He laughed, completely oblivious to the fact that the company he was bragging about now belonged to exactly the kind of woman he claimed couldn't lead. My jaw tightened as I realized that Patterson Industries, the company I had just acquired for its growth potential, apparently had serious discrimination issues that would require immediate and decisive correction. What Derek and my parents didn't know was that their quiet, supposedly unsuccessful daughter had built something extraordinary from absolutely nothing. After graduating summa cum laude from MIT with degrees in finance and computer science, I had taken a position at Goldman Sachs in Boston, working 100-hour weeks and living in a studio apartment the size of most people's closets. Every penny I earned went into savings and investment research, while my colleagues spent their bonuses on expensive cars and weekend trips to the Hamptons. 3 years of grueling work in high-stakes finance taught me everything about identifying undervalued companies and understanding market inefficiencies that others missed. I studied annual reports until I could recite balance sheets from memory-analyzed industry trends while riding the subway to work, and developed investment algorithms during my lunch breaks. My supervisors noticed my analytical skills and innovative approaches to portfolio management, but I had bigger plans than climbing someone else's corporate ladder. Starting my own investment consulting firm required courage that surprised even me. I filed the paperwork from my tiny Boston apartment, using my kitchen table as both office desk and conference room for months. My first clients were small business owners who couldn't afford traditional investment firms, but my unconventional strategies and personal attention helped their portfolios outperform major market indices consistently. Word spread quietly through professional networks about the brilliant young woman who could spot opportunities that seasoned investors overlooked completely. Within 2 years, I was managing portfolios worth $50 million for clients ranging from tech entrepreneurs to retired doctors looking for ethical investment options. My specialty became identifying companies with strong growth potential but poor leadership structures, particularly those that undervalued their female employees or had untapped markets they were failing to reach effectively. Patterson Industries had appeared on my acquisition target list 6 months ago because of exactly these characteristics. My business partner, James Martinez, had graduated from Harvard Business School the same year I left Goldman Sachs, and we met at an investment conference where I was presenting research on gender diversity correlation with company profitability. James immediately recognized that my analytical mind, combined with his networking abilities, could create something powerful in the investment world. Together, we built our firm's reputation on thorough research, ethical investing practices, and delivering results that consistently exceeded client expectations. Linda Chen joined our team after leaving a major consulting firm, where she had been passed over for promotion 3 times, despite being their top performer. Her financial analysis skills and attention to detail made our due diligence process incredibly thorough, and her personal experience with workplace discrimination gave her unique insights into companies that were wasting their human capital through poor management practices. When we researched Patterson Industries, Linda immediately identified red flags in their employee retention data and promotion patterns. The irony was almost poetic. Patterson Industries had caught my attention not because Derek worked there, but because their financial statements showed a company with solid fundamentals being held back by management inefficiencies. Their employee turnover rate in technical positions was 30% above industry average. Their female employees were concentrated in lower-paying positions despite having comparable qualifications, and their client satisfaction scores suggested leadership problems that were affecting business relationships. David Thompson, Patterson Industries' retiring founder and CEO, had built the company from nothing over 20 years, but recognized that he lacked the vision to take it to the next level. Our preliminary meetings convinced him that my firm understood both the technical aspects of his business and the cultural changes needed to unlock its true potential. The acquisition negotiations took 4 months of careful planning and financial structuring, but yesterday afternoon we signed the final papers, making me the majority owner of a $50 million technology company. The timing of Derek's promotion announcement was pure coincidence, but as I sat at our family dinner table listening to his bragging, I received a text message from David Thompson confirming that Derek's promotion had been announced this morning through internal company channels. The message also noted that all management decisions were now subject to new ownership approval, and Derek's promotion paperwork had not yet been finalized or submitted to human resources for processing. Derek continued his celebration completely unaware that he was announcing a promotion that technically no longer existed to a company that now belonged to the sister he'd spent decades dismissing as irrelevant and unsuccessful. Taking a slow sip of my wine to steady my nerves, I set down my glass and looked directly at Derek across the table, laden with our mother's finest china and holiday centerpiece. "That's really interesting news about your promotion, Derek," I said, my voice remaining calm despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. "But I'm afraid there might be some confusion about your new position." Derek's confident expression faltered slightly, but he quickly recovered with that familiar condescending laugh he used whenever anyone dared to question his version of events. "What could you possibly know about my career, Suzie? You've never even worked for a real company. Investment consulting from your apartment doesn't count as understanding corporate hierarchy or business operations." Our parents shifted uncomfortably in their chairs, sensing tension but unable to understand the undercurrents flowing between their 2 children. My father cleared his throat diplomatically, attempting to redirect the conversation back to safer territory. But I wasn't finished revealing the truth that would reshape everything they thought they knew about both Derek and me. Actually, I know quite a bit about Patterson Industries. I continued pulling out my phone and opening the encrypted folder containing acquisition documents. You see, as of yesterday afternoon at 3:47 p.m., I own Patterson Industries. The acquisition was finalized through my investment firm, and all existing management decisions are now subject to new ownership approval. I turned the phone screen toward Derek, showing him the signed purchase agreement with David Thompson's signature clearly visible next to mine. The color drained from Derek's face as he stared at the legal documents, but his mind seemed unable to process what his eyes were seeing. "That's impossible," he stammered, his voice losing its earlier confidence and bravado. "You're making this up to ruin my moment. There's no way you could afford to buy anything, let alone a major technology company with hundreds of employees." My mother dropped her fork with a clatter that seemed to echo through the suddenly silent dining room. "Suzie, what is Derek talking about? How could you own a company? We don't understand what's happening here." Her voice carried genuine confusion mixed with the first hint that perhaps she had misunderstood something fundamental about her quiet daughter's life and career. I methodically scrolled through additional documents on my phone, showing them financial statements, legal filings, and business licenses that painted a picture of success they had never imagined possible. My investment firm has been managing portfolios worth over $200 million for the past 3 years, I explained patiently. Patterson Industries appeared on our acquisition list because it's a fundamentally sound company being held back by management inefficiencies and cultural problems that limit its growth potential. Derek's hands began trembling as the magnitude of the situation became clear to him. Everything he had built his identity around, every source of his superiority over me, was crumbling before his eyes like a house of cards in a strong wind. "But I just got promoted," he whispered, as if saying it quietly might somehow make it more real or permanent. "Your promotion was announced this morning through internal channels." I acknowledged, showing him David Thompson's text message on my screen. "However, the paperwork hasn't been submitted to Human Resources yet, and all management decisions now require new ownership approval. Technically, your promotion exists only as an announcement, not as an actual position with legal standing." Our father finally found his voice, though it sounded strained and uncertain. "Suzie, are you saying that you're Derek's boss now, that you own the company where he works?" The concept seemed so foreign to his understanding of our family dynamics that he struggled to form the words properly. "That's exactly what I'm saying," I replied, keeping my tone professional despite the emotional weight of this moment. "Derek is now an employee of my company, subject to the same performance standards and ethical guidelines that I'm implementing across all departments and management levels." Derek suddenly stood up from the table, his chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor, and pulled out his own phone with shaking fingers. "I'm calling my boss right now to confirm this ridiculous story. David Thompson will straighten this out and prove that you're lying about everything." His voice carried desperate hope mixed with growing panic as he realized how much was at stake. The phone call lasted less than 2 minutes, and I watched Derek's face cycle through disbelief, anger, and finally crushing realization as David Thompson confirmed the acquisition details and explained that a company-wide email had been sent an hour ago announcing the ownership change and management review process. Derek's promotion celebration had become his professional funeral, and he was only beginning to understand the implications. When he hung up the phone, Derek looked around the table at our shocked parents and then back at me with an expression I had never seen before. For the first time in our lives, I held complete power over something he desperately wanted and needed, and there was absolutely nothing he could do to manipulate, charm, or bully his way out of the situation he now faced. Derek slumped back into his chair, his face cycling through emotions like a broken kaleidoscope. The reality of his situation was settling in, but instead of accepting it gracefully, I could see his mind working furiously to find an angle. Any angle that might salvage his position or restore his sense of superiority over me. "This is absolutely unacceptable," he said, his voice rising with indignation as he looked around the table for support. "Suzie has been plotting against me for years, probably investigating my company and planning this acquisition specifically to ruin my career and humiliate me in front of our family." He pointed an accusing finger in my direction, his eyes wild with desperation and growing anger. Our parents looked between us uncertainly, clearly struggling to understand how their family dinner had transformed into something resembling a corporate boardroom confrontation. My mother wrung her hands nervously, while my father loosened his tie, as if the air in the room had suddenly become too thick to breathe properly. "Derek, that's not what happened at all." I tried to explain calmly, but he cut me off with a sharp gesture and continued his increasingly frantic narrative. "She's always been jealous of my success, my social connections, my ability to advance in the business world through relationship building and natural leadership abilities." Derek continued his voice, becoming more shrill with each word. "This acquisition is nothing more than revenge disguised as business, and frankly, it's pathetic that she would stoop to such vindictive behavior just because she couldn't succeed through normal channels." I felt the familiar sting of his accusations, the same dismissive tone he had used throughout our childhood whenever I achieved something he couldn't diminish through his usual tactics. But this time, I had the power to set the record straight and protect myself from his manipulative behavior patterns. Patterson Industries was identified as an acquisition target 6 months ago, long before I knew you worked there, I said firmly. The decision was based purely on financial analysis and growth potential, not personal relationships or family dynamics. I pulled up the preliminary research documents on my phone, showing timestamps that predated my knowledge of Derek's employment there. But Derek wasn't interested in facts or evidence. He had shifted into full manipulation mode, the same strategy he had used since childhood, whenever reality didn't align with his preferred version of events. "Mother, Father, you need to understand what Suzie is trying to do to our family," he said, turning toward them with pleading eyes and a voice calculated to evoke sympathy. "She's been secretly building this business empire while pretending to struggle all, so she could eventually destroy my career and make me look foolish." Derek continued, his tone becoming increasingly emotional and theatrical. "This is about sibling rivalry taken to a completely inappropriate and destructive level that will tear our family apart if you don't intervene immediately." Our parents exchanged worried glances, clearly uncomfortable with the escalating tension, but unsure how to process the competing narratives their children were presenting. They had always seen Derek as the successful one, and me as the quiet, studious daughter who never quite lived up to his charismatic achievements. When emotional manipulation didn't produce the desired results, Derek shifted tactics again this time, appealing to family loyalty and shared history. "Remember when we were kids, and Suzie always felt left out of our family activities because she preferred books to people?" he said, his voice taking on a nostalgic tone. "This is the same pattern, except now she has money and power to force her way into situations where she doesn't belong." The irony was breathtaking. Derek was rewriting our childhood history, painting himself as the inclusive brother and me as the antisocial outsider when the truth was exactly the opposite. He had deliberately excluded me from family activities, stolen my achievements, and convinced our parents that my academic focus was somehow antisocial rather than admirable. "You know what the right thing to do here is, Suzie," Derek said, leaning forward with renewed intensity. "Make me a partner in your firm. Give me an executive position that recognizes my experience and connections at Patterson Industries. Show our parents that you're capable of putting family loyalty above petty jealousy and business calculations." His entitlement was staggering. Within minutes of discovering that I owned the company where he worked, Derek was demanding not just job security but promotion and partnership in my firm. The audacity would have been amusing if it weren't so perfectly consistent with his lifelong pattern of expecting unearned rewards and special treatment. When I didn't immediately respond to his demands, Derek played his final card. "If you don't do the right thing here, if you use this business acquisition to hurt me professionally, then I'll have no choice but to cut all contact with this family." He threatened, his voice becoming cold and calculating. "Mother and father will have to choose between their children, and I think we all know who they'll choose when they understand what you've really done here." The threat hung in the air like smoke from a house fire, acrid and suffocating. Derek was willing to destroy our family relationships to protect his ego and maintain his illusion of superiority over me. He would rather burn everything down than admit that his quiet, supposedly unsuccessful sister had achieved something he couldn't manipulate or steal from her. But as I looked at Derek's desperate face across our family's Thanksgiving table, I realized he had just made a crucial mistake. In his panic and entitlement, he was about to reveal something that would change everything and justify every difficult decision I was about to make regarding his employment at Patterson Industries. "Actually, Derek, before you say anything else, there's something you should know," I said quietly. "I'm going to need you to be very careful about what you say next because as the new owner of Patterson Industries, I'm legally obligated to investigate any potential misconduct by employees, especially those in management positions." Derek's face went pale as he realized he might have already said too much, but the damage was done and his next words would seal his fate completely. "Fine, you want the truth," Derek said, his voice becoming reckless with desperation. "I've been taking money from the company for months. Client entertainment expenses, travel, reimbursements, equipment, purchases that never happened. $37,000 that I used to maintain the lifestyle that comes with being a successful executive." He laughed bitterly, as if confessing to embezzlement was somehow proof of his business acumen rather than criminal behavior. Everyone does it at that level, Suzie. It's just part of how business works in the real world, something you wouldn't understand from your little apartment-based consulting operation. Derek continued digging his grave deeper with every word. But now that you own the company, you can just make it disappear from the books. Consider it a family favor payment for all the times I protected you from bullies when we were kids. The room fell completely silent as the magnitude of Derek's confession settled over our family dinner table like a toxic cloud. He had just admitted to felony embezzlement and asked me to cover it up, all while rewriting history about protecting me from bullies when he had been the primary bully throughout my childhood. Our parents stared at Derek in shock, finally seeing their golden child for what he really was, a criminal who felt entitled to steal from his employer and expected his family to help him avoid consequences for his actions. I felt my stomach drop as Derek's confession echoed through the dining room. What had started as a family confrontation about corporate ownership had just become a legal matter that required immediate attention and professional handling. I couldn't ignore or minimize his admission of embezzlement, regardless of family relationships or the emotional complexity of our sibling dynamic. "Derek, I need you to understand something very clearly," I said, pulling up my contacts and finding Linda Chen's number. "What you just described isn't corporate culture or acceptable business practice. It's embezzlement. And as the new owner of Patterson Industries, I'm legally obligated to investigate these allegations thoroughly and report any criminal activity to the appropriate authorities." Derek's face transformed from desperate confidence to genuine panic as he realized the implications of his confession. "Wait, Suzie, I wasn't being serious. That was just hypothetical talk, family dinner conversation that got out of hand because I'm stressed about the ownership change." He backtracked frantically, his voice becoming high and strained. But it was too late for explanations or retractions. Linda answered my call on the second ring, and I stepped away from the table to explain the situation privately, while Derek pleaded with our parents to intervene on his behalf. Within 20 minutes, Linda had accessed Patterson Industries' financial systems remotely and begun tracing the expense account, irregularities that Derek had described in his confession. The preliminary investigation results were devastating and far more extensive than Derek had initially admitted. Linda discovered a pattern of fraudulent expense claims dating back 8 months, including charges for expensive restaurants where no client meetings had occurred, hotel bookings for personal vacations disguised as business travel and equipment purchases that were never delivered to the company but had been shipped to Derek's home address. The total amount appears to be $37,462. Linda reported during our phone call, her voice professionally neutral, despite the personal nature of the situation. "But there's something else you need to know about. I'm finding concerning patterns in the HR database regarding complaints about Derek's behavior toward female employees." My heart sank further as Linda explained that Derek's promotion hadn't been based on merit or performance, but rather represented an attempt by previous management to move him away from 2 female colleagues who had filed informal complaints about sexual harassment and hostile work environment issues. Margaret Wilson, the HR director, had documented several incidents but had been pressured by upper management to handle the situation quietly rather than through formal disciplinary procedures. The scope of Derek's misconduct was far beyond what I had imagined possible. This wasn't just about embezzlement or corporate politics, but about workplace safety and the protection of employees who had been silenced by a system that prioritized avoiding scandal over addressing serious behavioral problems. "We need to contact Jennifer Hayes and Rachel Adams immediately." I told Linda, reading from the HR files that Margaret Wilson was forwarding to our legal team. They deserve to know that they now have an employer who will take their complaints seriously and ensure their workplace is safe and professional. Meanwhile, Derek had convinced our parents that I was overreacting to what he claimed was a minor misunderstanding about expense account procedures. "Suzie doesn't understand how corporate finance works at the executive level," he told them, his voice taking on that familiar tone of condescending expertise. She's turning a small accounting discrepancy into a federal case because she's never worked in a real corporate environment. Our father seemed torn between his instinct to support Derek and his growing realization that the situation was more serious than a simple family disagreement. Derek, if there are financial irregularities, shouldn't you work with Suzie to resolve them properly through the company's accounting procedures? He asked tentatively. There are no irregularities. Derek snapped his patience wearing thin as his attempts to control the narrative continued failing. Suzie is manufacturing problems that don't exist because she wants revenge for perceived slights from when we were children. This is all about her inability to handle normal sibling competition in a mature adult manner. But even as Derek spoke, I was receiving updates from our legal team about additional evidence of his misconduct. Susan Brooks, our attorney, had contacted the local district attorney's office to report the embezzlement and request guidance on proper procedures for handling the investigation while protecting both the company's interests and the rights of all employees involved. The most damaging evidence came from Patterson Industries' IT department, which had maintained backup copies of all employee communications and computer activities as part of their standard data security protocols. Derek's attempts to delete emails and modify expense reports had been automatically logged and preserved, creating a digital trail that documented both his original fraudulent activities and his subsequent attempts to cover them up. The attempted cover-up actually constitutes additional charges, Susan explained during our emergency conference call. Destruction of evidence and obstruction of justice are separate felonies that compound the original embezzlement charges significantly. Jennifer Hayes and Rachel Adams both agreed to speak with our HR team about their experiences working with Derek, and their accounts painted a picture of systematic harassment and intimidation that had made their work environment hostile and unprofessional. Derek had made inappropriate comments about their appearance, questioned their technical competence based on their gender, and retaliated against them professionally when they didn't respond positively to his advances. He told me that women in technology were just diversity hires who would never advance to real leadership positions. Jennifer reported during her interview with Margaret Wilson. When I complained about his behavior, previous management told me that Derek had valuable client relationships that couldn't be jeopardized by personality conflicts or misunderstood communications. The pattern became clear. Derek had been protected by a corporate culture that valued short-term profits over employee safety, and his promotion had been designed to move him away from his victims rather than address his behavior through proper disciplinary action or training programs. As the investigation continued throughout the evening, Derek's desperation increased proportionally. He began calling former colleagues and clients, trying to build support for his version of events and gather character references that might minimize the impact of the charges he was facing. But his most damaging mistake came when he attempted to access his Patterson Industries computer remotely to delete additional evidence of his misconduct. The IT security system automatically flagged his unauthorized access attempt and preserved screenshots of the files he was trying to modify or destroy, providing prosecutors with clear evidence of his consciousness of guilt and ongoing attempts to obstruct the investigation. By midnight, local police had become involved due to the felony threshold amounts involved in Derek's embezzlement, and our family Thanksgiving dinner had transformed into a criminal investigation that would reshape not only Derek's future, but the entire culture and management structure of Patterson Industries. The next 6 months unfolded like a carefully orchestrated symphony of justice and redemption that touched every aspect of our family and professional lives. Derek's criminal charges moved through the legal system with methodical precision, while Patterson Industries underwent the most comprehensive cultural transformation in its 20-year history. Derek's wife, Sarah, made the painful decision to file for divorce after learning about his harassment of female coworkers and the full extent of his financial deception. I can't expose our children to someone who treats women the way Derek has treated his colleagues. Sarah explained when she called to thank me for bringing the truth to light. They deserve to see healthy relationships and respectful behavior modeled in their daily lives. The divorce proceedings revealed additional layers of Derek's deceptive behavior, including credit card debt he had hidden from Sarah and financial commitments that put their family's security at risk. Sarah's attorney discovered that Derek had been using his embezzled funds to maintain an appearance of success that his actual salary couldn't support, creating a house of cards that was always destined to collapse eventually. Our parents underwent their own profound transformation as they confronted the reality of how their favoritism had enabled Derek's destructive behavior, while simultaneously damaging my self-esteem and sense of family belonging. They enrolled in family therapy with Dr. Michael Grant, a specialist in sibling dynamics and parental bias, who helped them understand how their unconscious gender preferences had shaped both of their children's personalities and life choices. We realized that we had been celebrating Derek's superficial charm while ignoring Suzie's genuine achievements, my mother admitted during one of our first honest family conversations. We taught Derek that he could get by on manipulation and entitlement, while we taught Suzie that her accomplishments would never be valued or recognized by the people who should have supported her most. My father's transformation was even more dramatic as he began educating himself about workplace discrimination and the systemic barriers that women face in business and technology fields. I've spent decades unconsciously perpetuating attitudes that hurt both my daughter and countless other women. He said, his voice heavy with genuine remorse. It's time for me to become part of the solution rather than part of the problem. Meanwhile, Patterson Industries flourished under new management policies that prioritized merit-based advancement, comprehensive harassment prevention, and transparent communication about company goals and employee expectations. Jennifer Hayes and Rachel Adams were both promoted to leadership positions where their technical expertise and management skills could be properly utilized and recognized. Tom Bradley, who had been overlooked for Derek's position despite superior qualifications and performance records, became the new regional director through a fair and transparent selection process. His leadership style emphasized collaboration and mentorship, creating an environment where all employees felt valued and supported in their professional development. The company's financial performance improved dramatically as employee satisfaction and retention rates increased across all departments. Client satisfaction scores reached record highs as our teams became more innovative and responsive under leadership that actually valued their contributions and created space for their ideas to be heard and implemented. Derek's legal situation required careful navigation between justice and compassion. Rather than pursuing maximum penalties that would have resulted in significant prison time, our legal team worked with prosecutors to develop a resolution that included full restitution, extensive community service, mandatory counseling about workplace harassment and financial responsibility, and ongoing supervision to ensure compliance with court orders. The community service portion of Derek's sentence focused specifically on organizations that educate men about the impact of harassment and discrimination on women's careers and personal well-being. Working with these groups forced Derek to confront the real consequences of his behavior and develop empathy for the people he had hurt through his actions and attitudes. For the first time in my life, I'm listening to women talk about their experiences without trying to minimize or dismiss what they're saying, Derek told me during one of our supervised family therapy sessions. I'm beginning to understand how much damage I've caused, not just to Jennifer and Rachel, but to Sarah, to you, and to our entire family dynamic. His transformation wasn't immediate or easy, but it was genuine. Derek began attending regular therapy sessions focused on addressing his entitlement issues and developing healthy relationship patterns. He found employment with a nonprofit organization that helps formerly incarcerated individuals find stable housing and employment work that requires humility and service rather than the ego gratification he had always sought. The most remarkable change occurred during Derek's testimony in the civil case that Jennifer Hayes and Rachel Adams filed against Patterson Industries' former management. Derek voluntarily provided detailed information about the corporate culture that had enabled harassment and discrimination, helping establish a legal precedent that would protect future employees from similar mistreatment. I was part of a system that treated women as less capable and less valuable than men. Derek testified, his voice steady and clear. I used my position to make inappropriate comments and create a hostile environment for female colleagues, and when they complained, I was protected by managers who cared more about avoiding problems than addressing serious misconduct. His cooperation helped our legal team build comprehensive cases against the former executives who had enabled the harassment culture, resulting in significant financial settlements for the victims and policy changes that became a model for other companies facing similar issues. Our family healing process was gradual but genuine, built on honest acknowledgement of past mistakes and committed effort to create healthier patterns going forward. Derek's children, 7-year-old Emma and 5-year-old Michael, began spending weekends with our parents who were learning to provide supportive, nurturing relationships without the gender bias that had damaged Derek and me. Aunt Suzie Daddy says you're really smart and you help people with their money. Emma told me during one family dinner her innocent observation highlighting how differently Derek now spoke about my career and achievements. He says he's sorry he wasn't nice to you before, and he wants to be a better person like you. The transformation extended beyond our immediate family as Patterson Industries became recognized as a leader in ethical business practices and gender equality in the technology sector. We implemented mentorship programs, transparent promotion criteria, and comprehensive training that helped other companies replicate our success in creating inclusive, productive workplace cultures. 6 months after that explosive Thanksgiving dinner, Derek had completed his community service requirements and was thriving in his nonprofit work. Sarah had rebuilt her life as a confident single mother, and our parents had become active advocates for gender equality and respectful family dynamics. Patterson Industries had increased its profitability by 30% while becoming a sought-after employer for talented professionals of all backgrounds. The most meaningful transformation was personal. I finally felt like a valued member of my own family with parents who celebrated my achievements, and a brother who treated me with respect and genuine appreciation for the person I had always been, but had never been allowed to express fully within our previous family dynamics. Our next family Thanksgiving looked completely different from the previous year's dramatic confrontation, though we gathered around the same dining room table with the same china and silver that had witnessed Derek's confession and downfall. This time, the atmosphere was filled with genuine gratitude, honest communication, and the kind of warmth that can only emerge after a family has faced its worst truths and chosen to rebuild on a foundation of respect and understanding. Derek arrived early to help our mother prepare dinner, something he had never done in previous years when he expected to be served and celebrated without contributing effort or consideration for others. His relationship with cooking had become part of his personal growth as he learned to find satisfaction in service and contribution rather than recognition and praise. Suzie, I want to thank you again for stopping my destructive path before it went further and caused even more damage to innocent people, Derek said as we worked together to set the table, his voice carrying none of the false charm or manipulation that had characterized his previous communications with me. Buying Patterson Industries didn't just save a company or provide justice for Jennifer and Rachel. It saved our family by forcing all of us to confront truths we had been avoiding for decades. Our parents had undergone the most dramatic transformation of anyone in our family. They now spoke about my business achievements with genuine pride and understanding, asking thoughtful questions about my work and celebrating milestones they had previously dismissed or ignored. More importantly, they had educated themselves about gender bias and workplace discrimination, becoming advocates who spoke openly about their own mistakes and the importance of treating all children with equal respect and support. "We want to make a toast," my father said, raising his wine glass as our family gathered around the table, laden with traditional dishes and new additions that reflected our changed perspectives. To Suzie, whose courage and integrity not only built an impressive business empire, but also gave our family the opportunity to become the supportive, loving people we always should have been. My mother's eyes filled with tears as she continued the toast. And to Derek, who had the strength to face his mistakes honestly and do the hard work of becoming someone worthy of our love and respect. Both of our children have shown us what true success looks like, using your abilities to lift others up rather than climbing over them to reach personal goals. Derek's children, Emma and Michael, had adapted remarkably well to their parents' divorce and their father's transformation. They spent weekends with Derek at his modest apartment near the nonprofit where he worked, learning about service and humility rather than entitlement and superiority. Emma had started a recycling program at her elementary school after learning about social responsibility from Derek's community service work. Daddy says Aunt Suzie is like a superhero because she helps people and makes companies better. Michael announced during dinner his innocent perspective, highlighting how completely Derek's attitude toward me had changed. And Daddy is learning to be a helper too, instead of being mean to people at work. Sarah joined us for dessert, as she did for most family celebrations, now that the toxicity and tension Derek had created were gone from our family dynamic. She was thriving as a single mother and had returned to her nursing career with renewed passion, supported by parents-in-law who finally understood the importance of creating healthy relationships for their grandchildren. "Derek is a completely different person now," Sarah told me privately while we cleaned dishes together. "The children actually enjoy spending time with him because he listens to them and plays with them instead of treating them like accessories to his image. They're seeing what a father should be for the first time in their lives." Patterson Industries continued to thrive under my leadership, becoming a model for ethical business practices that other companies studied and replicated. Jennifer Hayes had been promoted to Senior Technical Director and was leading our most innovative projects, while Rachel Adams had transitioned into our Human Resources Department, where her personal experience with harassment made her an effective advocate for employee safety and fair treatment. Tom Bradley's leadership as regional director had transformed not just his department, but the entire company culture. Employee satisfaction surveys showed record-high scores across all demographic groups, and our client retention rate had increased to 96% as teams became more collaborative and innovative under respectful, supportive management. The financial success was remarkable, but secondary to the human transformation that had occurred throughout the organization. We had proven that companies could be both profitable and ethical, that treating employees with dignity and respect actually improved business outcomes rather than creating obstacles to success. Derek's work with formerly incarcerated individuals had given him purpose and perspective that his previous corporate climbing had never provided. He was developing genuine leadership skills based on service and empathy, rather than manipulation and entitlement, and his supervisors were considering him for program management positions that would allow him to create systemic change in criminal justice reform. The irony is that I'm finally becoming the leader I always claimed to be. Derek reflected during one of our monthly coffee meetings, a new tradition we had established to maintain honest communication and continue rebuilding our relationship. But real leadership means helping other people succeed, not stepping on them to advance your own position. Our family had learned that true success comes from lifting others up rather than climbing over them. That integrity creates lasting satisfaction, while entitlement leads to inevitable destruction, and that admitting mistakes and working to correct them is far more valuable than maintaining false images of perfection. The most important lesson was personal. I finally understood that my worth had never depended on my family's recognition or validation, but their growth and transformation had allowed us to build genuine relationships based on mutual respect and shared values. We had all become better people through facing our worst truths and choosing to create something healthier and more authentic together. As we finished dinner and prepared to spend the evening playing games and sharing stories, I felt a deep sense of peace and completion that had eluded me throughout my childhood and early adulthood. Justice had been served, healing had occurred, and our family had emerged stronger and more loving than ever before. What started as a moment of shocking revelation at a family dinner table had become a journey of transformation that touched dozens of lives and created positive change that would continue rippling outward for years to come. Sometimes, the most painful confrontations lead to the most beautiful new beginnings, and I was grateful for the courage to speak truth, even when it was difficult, and the wisdom to choose justice tempered with compassion. Now I want to ask you something important. Have you ever had to choose between protecting family relationships and doing what's ethically right, even when it meant confronting people you love about their harmful behavior? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your insights could help others who are facing similar difficult decisions about family justice and personal integrity. If this story resonated with you and reminded you of the importance of standing up for what's right, even in difficult circumstances, please give it a like and subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength in challenging situations. Share this with someone who might need to be reminded that their voice matters and that speaking truth can create positive change even in the most complicated family dynamics. Thank you for listening to this journey of justice transformation and the power of choosing integrity over easy answers. I hope your own family relationships are built on mutual respect, honest communication, and the kind of love that helps everyone become their best selves.